How many unfinished projects do you have at home? We often get excited about something we can fix or make or create, and perhaps we've been inspired by something we've seen on Pinterest or on YouTube. And we get all the materials, but all of those materials are still in our garage. They're still in our cupboard. Something happened that caused you to stop the project, to stop the work, and it's still just there. Maybe you promised yourself, one day I'm going to get around to finishing that project, but one day never ever comes. And your garage is littered with unfinished projects. Perhaps you've come across the world's most notorious unfinished buildings. Google it. This one is one of my favorites, the Siena Cathedral in Italy. It began in 1339. And 680 years later, it's still unfinished. It seems such a waste. All those plans, the idea, the dreams, it's left in ruins. But it's not just DIY projects or buildings that get left unfinished. Tragically, this happens in our lives. And it happens with devastating results. People get hurt. Brokenness in our society remains. Things that aren't right remain unhealthy. And though there's hope available to everyone, people either don't see it and they don't hear it because we never finished the work that God called us to do. You see, all of us start the project that God has given to us with this intention to finish well. I know of no couple on their wedding day who stood in front of all of their friends and made vows to each other that they didn't intend to follow through on in terms of those vows. Every couple dreams of staying together and experiencing a healthy marriage. But the enemy will do everything in his power to stop the work of marriage. I know of no parent who brought kids into the world who didn't intend to raise them well with this vibrant heart for God, a love and compassion for others, our skills to help other people flourish. But the enemy will do everything in his power to stop the work of parenting. I know of no diligent student who planned to do nothing useful in this world. I know of no leader who didn't intend to see their calling right through to the finish line. But I have met so many people in every sector of society, of every age, of every career, that threw in the towel and that never completed the good work God had called them to do. Couples who pledged to love each other gave up early. Parents who have kids making unwise choices, they gave up hope. Ministers who were given a place of trust, they chose compromise. Leaders who once had a vision of what could be, what should be, but they said, enough. It's just too hard. I'm done. And so the work God gave to them, it remains unfinished. It's in disrepair. You see, our enemy is relentless. He will do whatever it takes to stop the repair work from reaching a good resolution. Nehemiah had a dream that God had placed on his heart. It was a dream to build the walls around the city of Jerusalem so that the city could once again flourish. The dream was birthed out of a dislocated heart, seeing the brokenness, and knowing he couldn't just sit back anymore and watch that brokenness. And so he prayed and he planned and he rallied a diverse community together to come and build the walls around Jerusalem. Now, if you've just joined in with us today, I suggest you go to our website and listen to the previous messages about this wonderful repair story. If you've been tracking with us already, you'll know that in this series, in the story of repair, opposition came. And this opposition came in three waves. The first wave was external opposition. Enemies like Sanballat and Tobiah sought to stop the work of repair. motivated by their hunger for power, for money. They shamed and ridiculed the people. They surrounded and attacked. They were dream crushers. But the people of God continued to keep building. Trowel in one hand, sword in the other. They kept guard and got to work. And then a second wave came. Internal opposition. It came from a place the people weren't expecting, from within their own community. You see, when external opposition fails, the enemy slips in inside the walls and sows division and discord and disunity. But Nehemiah, he led the people through radical reform to bring unity and ensure the work continued. And then in Nehemiah 6, we come to the third wave. It's not external opposition, it's not internal opposition, it's individual opposition. It just got personal. It targeted one person. Take out Nehemiah and the enemies know the project is finished, it's over. Sanballat, Tobiah, Gershom the Arab, and the rest of the enemies found out that I had finished rebuilding the wall and that no gaps remained, though we had not yet set up the doors and the gates. So the walls are finished. The grand opening is in sight. It's just the doors and the gates need to be set up. I guess it's like having a house that's finished, but the garage door needs to go on. And until that garage door goes on, at night, if you're in a bad street, just not going to sleep in fear. Security's not up. The city here is not secure yet. The gates need to go up so the people can sleep at night without fear. And so the enemies come and they attack with this individual opposition. And it's in the form of distraction. You see, if your enemy can't destroy you, he will distract you. He will take you away from the purpose, from the good work God has for you, away from what you should be doing. There are three forms of distraction here in our story. The first one is a pleasant invite. It looks harmless. So Sanballat and Gershom sent a message asking me to meet them at one of the villages in the plain of Ono. But I realized that they were plotting to harm me. So I replied with this message to them. I am engaged in a great work, so I can't come. Why should I stop working to come and meet with you? 4 times they sent the same message, and each time I gave them the same reply. Now, the plain of Ono was close to Samaria. It's a beautiful valley, apparently, located 30 kilometers from Jerusalem. Quite a trip for Nehemiah, but it looks pleasant, it looks harmless, this invite. Nehemiah, why don't you come away for a while? I mean, you've been laying bricks for a long time now. Yeah, I know we've had our spats, a few disagreements, but let's get together. I mean, for better or worse, we're going to be living together as governors over this region. Just come on over to Ono. Somehow, though, Nehemiah, he knew their motives were not what they seemed. They did not have a meeting in mind. They had murder in mind. The enemies realized that if they're going to stop the work, that they don't need to bring a whole army together. They just need to take out one guy, and his name is Nehemiah. So they send this invite to Nehemiah 4 times. And Nehemiah responds with a no 4 times. He doesn't grill them about their motives. Each time he answers in the same way. I am engaged in a good work, a great work, he says. So I can't come. Why should I stop working to come meet with you? Now, Nehemiah could have seen this as an opportunity to convince his enemies, to forge a pathway ahead. But he discerned it rightly as a distraction. If he left his post, the repair work would never have been finished. And he was determined to see this great work right through to completion. There has never been a better time for you and for me to be distracted in our lives than right in this very moment. Bing, ring, newsflash, it's happening all the time. Our lives are prone to distraction. There's even a science out there now called interruption science. It studies the effect that interruptions have on us. At the University of California, one researcher named Gloria Mark found out that on average, workers are interrupted, get this, every 3 minutes. And much of these disruptions are actually self-directed. They're pleasant, they look harmless. These invites, they come to you and me every day. A text message, a post on Instagram, a new series on Netflix, or in business, perhaps a new opportunity. And these can be good things, but they are still distractions. See, if the enemy can't take you out, he will distract you from the great work God has called you to do. He will busy you so that you don't do what God has called you to do. He will distract you with some other task, with some other opportunity. And before you know it, and all the busyness and the hurry and the frenetic activity, you missed the most important thing. Somehow you got distracted in your business, but you ended a marriage. You got distracted sending your kids to the best schools, but you never taught them the way of Jesus. You got letters after your name, but you learned the hard way that intelligence is not the same as wisdom. You've made a ton of money, but you never grew rich in the things that matter most, which ironically aren't things at all. You watched all 11 seasons of fill in the blank, but you never learned to pray. You see, what if these distractions affect not just you, but what if they affect other people around you? What if it affects your family, your kids, your future kids, your future grandkids, your church brothers and sisters, small group people around you, colleagues? You see, it's really just about you. For instance, you might have heard the word devotions before. This idea when each day you take some time to pray and you open the scriptures and you read something and you reflect on that and you wonder what it's saying. Many of us struggle with this consistency beyond like 2 or 3 days. But what if this practice isn't just about you? What if it's actually something good and profound for others, for your kids, for your spouse, for your friends, for your church? What if what you do or what you don't do affects them? I think right now of the new mum at home who's living in a world of sleepless nights and nappy changes, and it all just feels way too much. And you want to do other things in your life right now. But what if you can see that what you're doing is great work? Yes, it's hard, but don't get distracted. I think of the person right now who's paying off debt, and that hill in front of you just feels too big. And when the enemy distracts you with some shiny new gadget, you need to be able to say, no, I'm doing a great work. I'm doing what God has called me to do. I'm going to pay off this debt and I won't be distracted. You see, no is a beautiful word. And if you have a repair story going on in your life and for the lives of others, you need to learn to say no. Because when you say no to that distraction, you are able to say yes to the very work God has called you to do. But when you say yes to that distraction, you're saying no to the work that God has called you to do. So why not say no to the distraction? To say, I am engaged in a great work, so I can't come. Why should I stop working to come and meet with you? Strategy 1 didn't work. So the enemies upped the antes with a new strategy, a rumor. The 5th time, Sanballat's servant came with an open letter in his hand. You ever wonder why this would be an open, unsealed letter? Because the enemies know it's going to be read, it's going to be circulated by a whole lot of other people, even before it gets to Nehemiah. This is what the letter said. There is a rumor among the surrounding nations, and Geshem, whoever Geshem is, tells me it's true, that you and the Jews are planning to rebel, and that is why you're building the wall. And according to his reports, you plan to be their king. He also reports that you have appointed prophets in Jerusalem to proclaim about you. Look, there's a king in Judah. You can be very sure this report will get back to the king. So I suggest you come and talk it over with me. You see, this is a deliberate and deceitful campaign. The enemies are putting a damaging spin on what's true. The walls are about to be built. That's true. But they spin it with agendas. Nehemiah, you wouldn't come to our invitation, so we're going to expose you. We want everybody to know two things about you, Nehemiah. First, when you came to Jerusalem, you had an evil motive behind rebuilding the wall. You came to lead a revolution, didn't you? And second, you want to be king. And so you're spreading prophets throughout the land to let them know there's a new king. And it's Nehemiah, it's not Artaxerxes. And so we're going to let the king of Persia know what your motive is. Now, all this actually has an air of credence. Everybody knows, apparently. Gershom, whoever Gershom is, apparently says it's true. It must be. Everybody's talking about it. It's like Sanballat is speaking for the majority of people. The source of the information, of course, is never declared. This is how rumors always work. Rumors then and rumors today. Nehemiah sends a reply back. Nothing like what you are saying is happening. You are making it up out of your head. They were all trying to frighten us, he says, thinking, their hands will get too weak for the work and it will not be completed. But I prayed, now strengthen my hands. It's impossible for any person not to be hurt by a rumor like this. Nehemiah is affected by it. And if you've been a recipient of rumor and slander, you know how hard it is to continue. And you want to be able to correct the information, the misinformation, but you can't. And all that you can do is pray and stay focused on the task that God has called you to do. Remember, the enemy wants to distract you, and he will even do that by spreading rumors. It's what he does. But don't let the whispers of people distract you from the call of God. Don't focus on what the critics say about you. Focus on what's true about you. What God's perspective about you is. You see, my relationship to God the Father provides me a great sense of belonging. That I am part of the family of God. That I can hear his voice say, you are my beloved son. Don't worry about what they're saying. Just hear my voice. Jesus, I know, went through rumors and slanders. When I prayed to him, I'm speaking to one who understands. He's been misunderstood too. He's been on the receiving end of misinformation. And I have the Holy Spirit who indwells and who empowers. He makes me equal to the task that God has called me to do. And so I can look the rumor square in the eye and I can say, I am engaged in a great work. And so I can't come. Why should I let the whispers of others distract me from the call of God on my life? As a side note, if you are ever in the information sharing business of this equation, you need to stop it. All it ever does is sow division. We see it right now, don't we, in the political sphere right now. It's happening on social media as people share rumors and they share misinformation. They pass on comments about agendas without the details that people know nothing about. I hope that none of us would ever do such a thing, because those kind of comments are deliberately out there to discredit someone. So take note of what you're saying and how you want to say it, because the enemy will use your words to destroy someone if at all possible. And we never want to put ourselves in that kind of place. Nehemiah here stays focused, but there is one more deliberate ploy to bring him down and to stop the work of repair. Distraction 3, moral compromise. He says, later I went to visit Shemaiah, and he said, hey, let's meet together inside the temple of God and bolt the door shut. Your enemies are coming to kill you tonight. Now, Shemaiah was one of the prophets. He's one of the good guys, or at least he's meant to be. But Nehemiah, he senses that there's something's not quite right, because he knew from God's word that, well, only priests are allowed to enter the temple of God. The temple's off limits to someone like Nehemiah. And then Nehemiah realizes, hey, you've been paid off. I mean, you're a prophet of God, but you're trying to get me to do something that's wrong, something that will discredit me. Here's a prophet from God who's meant to be speaking for God. Apparently, even those designated as spiritual leaders can oppose God's will and God's work. That the very people who should be on board with what God is saying and doing actually are able to become the instruments of the enemy. Oh, it's heavy. But Nehemiah realizes that if he did what Shemaiah was saying, he would be using his power and his position in inappropriate ways. So he replies, I mean, should someone in my position run from danger? Should someone in my position enter the temple to save his life? No, I won't do it. I realized that God had not spoken to him, but that he had uttered this prophecy against me because Tobiah and Sanballat had hired him, paid him off. They were hoping to intimidate me and make me sin. Then they would be able to accuse and discredit me. You see, leaders are particularly prone to kind of a heightened sense of entitlement. They lead staff, they write policies, they make decisions, they often work long hours. And that sense of entitlement can get them into trouble. Because of the sacrifices they make, they justify their actions that they can be let off the hook. The rules don't really apply to them, do they? You see, there will come a point in your life when you will need to discern the voice of God. Is this what God is saying to me right now in this season? Because there will be other voices around you distracting you, trying to move you away from what God has actually called you to do, and moving you ultimately to what's destructive in your life and in the lives of others. You might be making financial headway, and you see that advert for that piece of furniture that you can have in just 6 easy payments. And your progress right now, it just seems so slow. I mean, what could be the harm to just take those 6 easy payments and get that furniture? But it will distract you from what God has called you to do. Or maybe you're going through a tough spot in your marriage and somebody at work says to you, do you ever wonder what would have happened if we met before we were married? It's a message. It's a message that says, I could be available. What about you? It's not a message from God. See, that temptation, any temptation is there for all of us. Just get away. Shut yourself off. You deserve it. You'll be safe here. No one will know. But when we stay tuned to the voice of God, we're able to stay focused on the work God has called us to do by avoiding the distractions. You see, Nehemiah stayed focused. And because of that, look down here at verse 15. So on October the 2nd, the wall was finished, just 52 days after we had begun. And when our enemies and the surrounding nations heard about it, they were frightened and humiliated because they realized this work had been done with the help of God. Nehemiah did it. God did it in just 52 days. And remember, this is the work of an ordinary guy. He wasn't a pastor, he wasn't a priest. He might have reasoned, this isn't even my job. But he saw something broken. And his heart was the one that dislocated about it. And he was the one who knelt down to pray. And he was the one who stood up to act. He was the one who passionately inspired others. He was the one who pushed back the critics. He was the one who kept his eye on the end. And he was the one who saw the repair story right through to the end. So what about you? See, this is what I know to be true about you. When God made you, He knew what He was doing. He gave you gifts, He gave you passions, He gave you desires so that you can make an eternal difference in this world. That you can be a light, that you can be a witness, a voice of hope, an expression of love. I also know that the Spirit of God dwells in the life of every believer. He gives dreams, He gives visions to young and old alike. The dream He has placed right in front of you is a dream of a good work that He has called you to do. Now, some of you right now are at the beginning of your repair story. And for you, it's like you're putting up your hand, you want to engage. But perhaps you're still looking for a way to serve and engage. If that's you, I want to invite you to go to our website. It's full of a whole lot of opportunities to serve at a hospice, at disability centres, Eat My Lunch charity, City Mission, a whole host of others. Check them out on our website. Some of you right now, you've been in this repair work for some time. And it's hard. It's really hard. And there's always something that stands in the way of you accomplishing the dream, of you finishing the work. And the enemy will do everything he can to stop the work of repair. The repair is never easy. It will take effort. It will take determination. But let's not get tired of doing what is good, Paul says. At just the right time, we will reap a harvest of blessing if we don't give up. See, I believe perseverance is better than quitting. Too many people quit and they never see the repair finished. I'm reminded of the words Winston Churchill once delivered to the Harrow School. Never given. Never given. Never, 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 never. In nothing, great or small, large or petty, never given. And if you're doing a good work, don't let anything stand in the way of finishing it. It's vital that you complete it. Your marriage depends upon it. Your relationship with your kids is worth it. Your business needs it. The vulnerable in our city are crying out for it. And the mission depends upon it. See, hear us, O God. See the brokenness around us. See the opposition and the difficulties we face. And would you strengthen our hands that we would finish the great work that you have given to us to do. Thank you, God. Amen.